I started finding references to I started finding references to level 8 web buried in obscure forums a few months ago. Not the dark web most people know about, but something described as a system allegedly beyond government control. What I discovered next made me realize the internet has layers we're not supposed to know about, and level 8 might be the deepest access point that challenges everything we think we understand about who really controls what we see online. 3 years into my investigation, I realized we've been thinking about internet layers all wrong. The surface web accounts for roughly 5 to 10% of the total internet, the deep web makes up around 90%, and the dark web sits beneath both at roughly 0.01% by volume. Most cybersecurity experts stop at 3 layers: surface, deep, and dark. But what I found in those forums wasn't just talk about the traditional dark web. People were referencing something called Level 8 Web, and they weren't talking about it like another conspiracy theory. They were discussing access protocols, security measures, and infrastructure that suggested layers beyond what any official documentation acknowledges. The traditional model breaks down like this. The surface web is the public, searchable part of the internet. If a page appears in a search engine when you type a query, it lives on the surface web. The deep web is the portion of the web that is not indexed or searchable by ordinary search engines. Users must log in or have the specific URL or IP address to find and access a particular website or service. To access the dark web, you install a browser like Tor that connects through its own network, with each request passing through multiple servers through onion routing. But according to what I was reading, this 3-layer model is incomplete. In total, there are 8 levels of the web, with each level requiring increasingly sophisticated access methods. The references I found weren't just describing deeper versions of the same content, they were talking about fundamentally different infrastructure, different protocols, and different governing systems. Level 8 specifically kept appearing in discussions about something called the Primarch system. Level 8 is described as the last level of the web where the Primarch system literally controls the internet, with no government controlling it and no one even knowing what it is. It's described as an anomaly discovered by scans of the superdeep network in the early 2000s, believed to be separated by a quantum-level function lock. What made these discussions different from typical internet mythology was the technical specificity. People weren't just making wild claims, they were referencing specific encryption methods, access protocols, and security measures that suggested real infrastructure. Level 8 is described as impossible to access directly or even by quantum computers, but the conversations implied that indirect access methods existed. The more I researched, the more I realized that our understanding of internet architecture might be fundamentally limited. We think of the internet as this open, decentralized network, but what if there are control systems operating at levels we're not supposed to know about? What if Level 8 Web represents not just hidden content, but hidden control, infrastructure that governs how information flows through every layer above it? After spending months tracking down these references, I realized that reaching Level 8 wouldn't just require different software or better encryption skills. The discussions I found suggested that accessing levels beyond the traditional dark web requires hardware modifications and quantum computing capabilities. This wasn't about downloading a different browser or learning new coding techniques. This was about fundamentally different infrastructure. The technical barriers described in these forums were staggering. Level 8 is allegedly separated by something called a quantum-level function lock, terminology that suggests access requirements far beyond anything available to typical users. Multiple sources claim that Level 8 is impossible to access directly, even with quantum computers, which raises questions about what kind of technology would actually be required. The hardware requirements were just the beginning. What really caught my attention were the social and organizational barriers described around Level 8 access. Level 7 is described in these forums as a contested space where existing users actively prevent newcomers from advancing further. This wasn't just about technical capability. It suggested active resistance from gatekeepers with resources and motivation to maintain exclusivity. The implications felt much more serious when I realized we might be talking about invitation-only systems that operate entirely outside normal internet governance. Some sources suggested that at deeper levels, you really start getting attention you don't want, language that implied genuine danger, whether literal or metaphorical. It suggested that deeper levels of the internet might involve networks where access isn't just technically restricted, it's socially controlled by groups with serious resources and motivations to maintain exclusivity. What bothered me most was how this challenged my understanding of internet architecture itself. We think of the internet as this democratic, decentralized system where anyone with the right knowledge can access anything. But if Level 8 web represents infrastructure that requires specialized hardware, quantum computing capabilities, and approval from existing users who actively prevent others from joining, then we're talking about a fundamentally different model of information access, one that looks more like exclusive membership organizations than the open internet we assume we understand. The deeper I investigated, the more I realized that Level 8 might not just be hidden content or secret websites. It might represent a completely different internet, one with its own protocols, its own governance, and its own rules about who gets to participate in the flow of information at the deepest levels of global communication infrastructure. So the quantum level function lock that supposedly separates Level 8 from everything else really got me thinking. If these barriers are as sophisticated as the forums describe, what would it actually take to break through? Comment your thoughts below. Now let's explore what happens when someone actually tries to access these deeper levels, and why the consequences might be more serious than just technical failure. What I discovered when examining the actual content allegedly found at Level 8 was far more disturbing than technical barriers or exclusive access protocols. The discussions I'd been tracking weren't just describing hidden websites or encrypted communications. They were describing infrastructure that suggested global coordination at a level that challenges our basic understanding of how the internet actually works. The Primarch system is described as controlling the internet with no government oversight, but the implications extend far beyond another shadow government conspiracy theory. It's described as an anomaly discovered by deep web scans in the early 2000s, which raises a critical question. What scanning technology could detect infrastructure that supposedly requires quantum computing to access? What caught my attention were the technical specifics appearing consistently across these discussions. Level 8 is allegedly separated by something called a Level 17 Quantum TR001 level function lock. Terminology suggesting not just advanced encryption, but a specific quantum protocol that doesn't correspond to any publicly documented quantum computing standards. The precision of this language indicated either sophisticated fabrication or reference to actual technical infrastructure. Level 8 might represent something fundamentally different from what we think of as the Internet. The Primarch system is described as occasionally releasing unalterable commands with far-reaching implications across the entire network. This isn't about hidden content or secret websites. It suggests active control over internet infrastructure itself. Consider what that would mean in practice. If Level 8 web contains systems capable of issuing commands across the entire internet, we're not discussing a hidden layer of websites. We're discussing infrastructure that could control information flow, data routing, and network protocols at a global level. The implications would extend far beyond what any government or corporation currently controls. The technical requirements for reaching Level 8 started making sense when I considered this possibility. Level 8 is described as impossible to access directly or even by quantum computers, but what if that's because it's not designed to be accessed? What if it's designed to control access for everything else? The conversations I found weren't describing Level 8 as a destination. They were describing it as a control system. If that's accurate, then every layer of the internet we think we understand, surface web, deep web, dark web, might be operating under governance systems we're not supposed to know about. Level 8 wouldn't just be the deepest layer of hidden content, it would be the hidden foundation determining what content exists at every other level. The quantum level barriers protecting Level 8 aren't just about keeping people out, they're about maintaining control. While quantum computing can break current encryption methods like RSA and ECC, it also enables stronger security through quantum-resistant cryptography and unbreakable encryption keys. When I examined these developments alongside what I'd been reading about Level 8, a different question emerged. Not who's trying to break in, but who already has the resources to maintain something that's sophisticated. The technical requirements for Level 8 started making sense when I considered the entities with access to quantum infrastructure in 2026. Recognized as the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology by the United Nations, 2026 marks the pivotal moment where quantum computing goes from theory to practical application. This wasn't academic coordination. This was operational infrastructure involving groups with budgets and capabilities far beyond typical cybercriminal organizations. Government agencies represent the most obvious candidates for maintaining Level 8 infrastructure. Quantum computing aims for error correction by 2026, with Microsoft, Atom Computing, and Quira leading efforts to deliver small, error-corrected machines. The technical specificity I'd been finding in those forums, references to Level 17 Quantum T.R.001 level function locks, suggested access to quantum protocols that don't correspond to any publicly documented standards. Government agencies developing classified quantum capabilities would have exactly this kind of advanced, undocumented infrastructure. But governments weren't the only players with quantum resources. Experts expect meaningful business applications within 5 years, while fully fault-tolerant, large-scale quantum computers will likely arrive in the 2030s or later. These developments suggested that private entities were already operating quantum systems at scales that governments considered strategically sensitive. Tech corporations with quantum research divisions would have both the hardware and the motivation to maintain exclusive access to deeper internet layers. The financial resources required for Level 8 infrastructure became clearer when I considered what quantum security actually costs. These first movers will also be well positioned to access the up to $2.7 trillion in economic value that could emerge across industries in the next decade. If quantum infrastructure could generate trillions in economic value, the quantum systems allegedly protecting Level 8 would demand resources available only to major nation-states or the largest technology corporations. What disturbed me most was realizing that Level 8 might represent coordination between these entities rather than competition. The discussions I'd found weren't describing government versus corporate control. They were describing infrastructure that seemed to operate outside normal jurisdictional boundaries. If Level 8 Web contains systems capable of issuing commands across the entire Internet, we're discussing collaboration between groups with quantum capabilities, unlimited budgets, and motivations to control information flow at a global level. The Primark system isn't just hidden from us. It's maintained by entities with resources we can't match and coordination we're not supposed to understand. What terrified me most wasn't the quantum arms race or the technical barriers protecting Level 8. It was realizing that our understanding of internet freedom might be fundamentally wrong. Quantum computing brings both benefits and challenges to cybersecurity. While it can break current encryption methods like RSA and ECC, it also enables stronger security through quantum-resistant cryptography and unbreakable encryption keys. Yet the discussions I'd been finding described Level 8 as an anomaly discovered in the early 2000s, 20 years before governments and corporations began racing to develop quantum defenses. If Level 8 Web contains infrastructure requiring quantum computing to access, and that infrastructure has existed since the early 2000s, then someone possessed quantum capabilities decades before the rest of the world understood what quantum computing could do. Organizations are exploring quantum key distribution, QKD, to create secure communication channels that detect interception attempts and ensure data confidentiality. But what if that moment, the moment when quantum computers became available, already happened, just not for us? The implications extend far beyond hidden websites or secret communications. If Level 8 represents infrastructure with quantum capabilities that predate public quantum development by decades, then every encrypted communication, every secure transaction, every piece of data we've considered protected might have been accessible to Level 8 operators this entire time. We've been building encryption to protect against threats we can see while something with capabilities we can't match has been operating in the background. The Primark system isn't just hidden from us, it represents a level of technological advantage that makes our entire understanding of Internet security meaningless. Level 8. Web doesn't just challenge what we know about the Internet's hidden layers. It suggests that the Internet we think we understand is actually a controlled environment, and we've never been the ones in control.
The quantum revolution everyone's preparing for might not be coming. It might have already happened, just not where we could see it. Level 8 web is hidden because revealing it would force us to confront a reality where internet freedom was never real, privacy was never possible, and the infrastructure we trust has been compromised from the beginning. The deepest layer of the internet isn't just technically inaccessible. It's the foundation that determines what every other layer can become. And that foundation has been operating according to rules we were never meant to understand, controlled by entities whose very existence challenges everything we thought we knew about digital sovereignty and the nature of information itself.
Subscribe for more Internet mysteries and watch this next. It reveals surveillance programs you've never heard of.